guys, I'm Charlotte. Welcome to my channel. I'm a nursing student in an ADN program in Colorado, and this entire channel is about my nursing journey from acceptance through to graduation and everything in between. So if you're looking for guidance on your nursing journey or inspiration or just someone to relate to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button in the corner. And if you find this video useful, give it a thumbs up. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about getting a Colorado CNA license. CNA stands for Certified Nurse Aide. I decided to go ahead and get this license because I'm going to nursing school and I really needed a job through nursing school, and I had to leave my last job because it was strictly Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. job, and that wasn't going to work with the flexibility I needed for nursing school. So I thought, oh, great job would be working as a nurse aide. I can get some clinical experience because I have no healthcare experience, and then also make some money while I'm in nursing school. That's why in the fall of 2020, I went ahead and took a nurse aide course at a local community college so that I could start the process of getting licensed to become a CNA. So what are the components to getting your CNA license in the state of Colorado? So first you have to take a nurse aide course. I took mine through a community college near me. Next, you have to pass the written exam, and then you also have to pass a skills exam. So I'm going to talk about those components. The nurse aide course I took through a local community college, and that course, both components ended up being 5 credit hours. So the state of Colorado requires 70 hours of in-class time and then 20 hours of clinical time. Spoiler alert, I didn't end up getting my clinical time. So because 2020 is the year of the COVID pandemic. So we ended up doing an alternative assignment in order to cover that clinical hours, and the state of Colorado has approved that because pandemic. And then we had the 70 hours of in-class time, which was a mixture of lectures as well as laboratory time where we practiced the skills that we were learning. So my course required that I get a workbook, which was this one, and it went along with the book that we were required, which was this one. So basically, every week we were assigned readings from this book, and then we had to do the matching workbook pages from this book. And so it was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We had exams. I thought the exams were pretty easy, especially basically if you did the homework. The classroom exams were a breeze, in my opinion. The laboratory part was pretty laid back, more just participation points. And it was a really great opportunity to get to practice the skills, because the way that the skills are taught and the way that you have to do them is very specific for the skills test. And so being able to practice those skills in the exact steps, like is in the real world, like in an actual practicing CNA, you don't necessarily go into a room just to do peri-care or just to do a bed bath. Usually you're doing kind of a lot of different cares and putting them all together. So you might help someone use a bedpan and then do peri-care, rather than being separate things. And so for the skills exam though, you have to kind of know all these exact steps for the skills exam. So the laboratory portion was really great because we were able to practice the skills in the way that we need to do them for the exam. And I'm by no means saying that how I do those skills in real life is completely different from the way that we get taught. It's just that when you're combining cares, you don't necessarily leave the room. And so part of the skills test is having all of those steps, like provide privacy. And so you have to, in the skills test, you have to do each of those skills in terms of providing privacy, leaving the room at the end, leaving the call light. And so that's all combined when you're in real life. The actual skills are really useful because knowing, how to wipe someone when you're doing female peri-care is really important to make sure that you're reducing urinary tract infections in your patients. I really wish that we had done our clinicals, because I got thrown into it when I did eventually get my CNA job. I was like, yeah, I have no clinical experience and I've never done any of these skills on a real person. So teach me. My employer was awesome and did a lot of on-the-job training with me, and I ended up shadowing people, I think for 1 or 2 weeks, which ended up being 6 shifts. So I got a lot of experience once I started my job. So the next component, as I kind of talked about a little bit before, is you do have to pass a written exam through the state state. So once you finish that entire community college course, then you go on and your instructor of that course submits you to the state and says, yes, this person has completed all of the classroom requirements and all of the clinical requirements, and they can now go on to the written and the skills exam for licensure. I finished my course. So we finished just before Thanksgiving, and then I ended up scheduling to take my written exam mid-December. And so the written exam is administered through Pearson VUE. So that's the company that administers the exam for the state. The actual body that gives you your license is called DORA, or the Colorado Department of Regulatory Affairs, Division of Professions and Occupations. So those are the people that give you your license, but Pearson VUE is the company that administers the exams for the state. You go on to Pearson VUE and you sign up for a time to take the test. And I thought that it was going to be like 20 of us all taking the CNA test at a specific time. And it wasn't. You kind of just go to a Pearson VUE testing location. You had to bring 2 forms of ID. I just brought my passport and my driver's license. So I showed up and basically checked in with the test administrator, who was sitting in a room watching a camera of the testing room. So there wasn't necessarily anyone in the testing room that was watching everyone, but obviously you couldn't cheat because he had cameras all over the room that he was watching so that he could check people in. Because then basically he took me to a room, set me up on the computer, and I took the exam. And there were other people in the room that had already started exam and were taking completely different exams, not necessarily the CNA exam. So any exam that Pearson VUE administers could have been taken there. So that's a little bit about how that works in case you're curious. So from there, I took the exam. The exam is 70 multiple choice questions. I thought it was extremely straightforward, and I'm not necessarily saying that from any particular perspective. I did study a little bit the night before, but I wouldn't say that I studied for weeks or that I studied extensively. I just reviewed the material that we went over in class, and that was plenty in order to pass the exam. And I've also heard that same sentiment from a lot of other CNAs, is that the written exam is the easier part of the licensure process. The final part, or it was my final part because I did this last, is the skills exam. So the state of Colorado requires that you do a skills exam. The skills exam is also administered through Pearson VUE. You have to do it at an approved testing site. It's usually done by a nurse or like a really experienced CNA. They're the testing, and you actually have to physically do skills, and the test administrator checks you off on those skills. So that's why you have to do it at an approved facility, because they have to have everything you need in order to do those skills, i.e. a mannequin, a bed, a call light, bedpans. There's so much. There's so many skills that they can randomly select. I actually ended up signing up for an exam that was at my place of work. So they are an approved testing facility, but the person that administered the test does not work at my facility and had never even been to my facility before they administered the test. So there's no benefit to doing. It's not like if you take your test at where you work or the school that you took your course at, that you're going to get some benefit because your professor is doing the test. So that's absolutely not the case. I believe if you teach a course at a facility, then you can't actually administer the test there because of bias and all those kind of things. I showed up, and for this test, it was a very specific time to arrive. All of us arrived at the same time. And then we were checked in, and then we were given time slots. So you do your test with one other person. So each of you have 30 minutes to do your test. And so for me, I was second. So the first test participant, I don't know what to call them. So the first test participant got given her 5 skills, and then she did them on me, some of them. So there's some skills that she didn't need me for. So I believe after the third skill, the test administrator said, you can go ahead and wipe down the bed and dispose of the linens that you laid on and go sit and wait for your exam. And they finished up her exam. And then it was the reverse when I did my test exam. So then the person that had taken the test before me, she was then the dummy. But there's no benefit to being first or second when you're paired up, because you get given completely different skills. For the exam, you get 30 minutes to do 5 skills. And the first skill is always going to be hand washing. I believe my professor said that one of the skills is always a vitals measurement. So I got assigned to do blood pressure, which for CNAs, you never get examined on doing manual blood pressure. It's always with a machine. So I feel like I lucked out on that one because that was pretty easy. I just had to basically demonstrate that I checked where the brachial pulse was, and then I put on the cuff correctly, and then knew how to press an inflate button and knew how to accurately record the blood pressure that was displayed on the machine. So that one was really easy. And then I've been told that one of your testing skills is always like a washing. So like foot washing, peri-care, modified bed bath, those kind of things. But yeah, you get 5 skills. So mine were, the hand washing was my first skill, the automatic blood pressure. I had to do passive range of motion on a lower extremity. So I only used to do 1. Then I got peri-care, and what was the other one I got? Brain fart. Oh, denture. Hello, Charlotte. The other skill that I did was dentures, how to clean a denture. And you only have to do like 1, so you don't have to do top and bottom. You just have to do either top or bottom. So that was my last skill. Yeah, that's kind of what the skills exam was like. I was going to also talk about the cost. So in the state of Colorado, currently I paid $50 to take my written exam, and I paid $85 to take the skills exam. Also, I paid, this is widely going to vary depending on what school you take your class at, but in all, with all the fees, the Colorado Opportunity Fund deduction, all that jazz, I ended up paying $892 for the 5 credit hours for the nurse aid class. And it's also important to know that I think it's state law, because at least my employer told me that they're required by law to reimburse me for the cost of getting my nurse aid. So since I just got my license, I just passed my skills exam, so I finished that course in November of 2020. I took my written exam in December of 2020, and then I wasn't able to find a skills exam to take until March of 2021. So, and I started my job in December of 2020. And so I just submitted all of my receipts from my course, my written exam, and my skills exam to HR, get reimbursed. But yeah, I was told that the state of Colorado requires them. So definitely, if you're getting a job as a CNA, ask for them to reimburse those expenses. Like, don't let that fly out the window. Then once you graduate, getting your first CNA job. So where I live, it was very, very easy. I applied to a long-term care facility, and they called me back like right away. And we're like, we want to schedule an interview. And so that was great. And that's because they were short-staffed. They were on the, I wouldn't say in the middle, but they were on the tail end of a COVID outbreak. And so they have multiple different levels of care. So they have independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. So I work in the skilled nursing section. I love the job, but the pay sucks. Like, do not become a CNA because you think you're gonna make a ton of money. That's not the case. I'll be very transparent about what I make because I haven't disclosed where I work. So when I was hired on, I made $14.25. That was because I didn't have my license yet. I should be making $15.25 an hour. And then they sometimes offer a lot of different incentives. Like, I've gotten texts being like, hey, can you come in tonight? Like, we need someone really badly. We'll pay you double time and short notice pay, you know, the whole shebang. That's good, but you do not make a lot of money. Especially where I live. That might sound like a lot of money for other areas, but where I live somewhere where McDonald's pays that much because the cost of living is so high. The liquor store hires for like $18 an hour, and babysitting, I make $20 to $26 an hour depending on how many kids. So if that gives you a context of some jobs that, you know, don't require you to bathe and wipe butts of elderly, as well as it's physical work, you know, like even with a Hoyer lift, when you're pulling people back into their chair, even when they're in a sling and they're being lifted, like that's still a lot of work. When you're trying to roll people because they're completely dependent on carers for their care, rolling people, that's a lot on your back. So, and also the amount of steps I get in one shift is just insane. So it is a really physical job. You don't have much downtime. If I have quote unquote downtime, I'm charting. So just to give you some context, I think it's an absolutely phenomenal job. And I think that every single person going into nursing school should do CNA job first. I'd much prefer to work in a hospital. My clinicals right now for nursing school are in a med-surg unit, and there are CNAs that work in that med-surg unit. And I think I would much prefer that setting over the long-term care setting, just because it's a lower patient to CNA or patient to nurse ratio. This is by no means saying that I'm shying away from work. It's just, it's a lot in a long-term care facility where we might have, you know, 20 patients for 2 CNAs and 1 nurse. And my facility has phenomenal ratios of like staff to patients. that is not the case at a lot of facilities. So I would definitely find out about that when you interview for jobs, because I've heard just horror stories of like 30 patients to one CNA. I can't say if that's accurate, but that's what I've been told happens at other facilities. So definitely find that out when you're applying for your job. I decided to go down to PRN, which means as needed, which means that I only end up covering shifts when they can't find any of their full-time or part-time staff to cover those shifts. At my facility, that means that I can pretty much work as much as I want, as long as I'm flexible in what shifts I'm picking up. But I made that decision because I can make more babysitting, and babysitting's not a physical, mental job. Nursing school is just a lot. It's really demanding, and you absolutely can work during nursing school. I think that's actually going to be one of my next videos, is can you work during nursing school? But it's really important to know what kind of jobs limit how many hours you work in a week. Work smarter, not harder. But I worked this morning and I still love it. I absolutely love our patients and I love the people I work with. The other thing that I would, in terms of pay and what's important to know, is by going down to PRN, I actually get paid more. So I get paid 10% more. So that is the whole process for getting your certified nurse aide license in the state of Colorado. If you have any questions, or you had different experiences than mine when you got your CNA license, maybe because you're in a different state or because you got your license in a non-COVID time, please comment below. I'd love to hear about them. Any questions, if you're thinking about going into nurse aiding, please let me know and I'd love to answer any questions. So give it a thumbs up if you found this information useful, comment below, and I will see you next time for my next video. Bye!